So what is going on, guys? I'm BO6. Welcome back to another video on the channel, where today we're going to be taking a closer look at the final ending cutscene for Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, which seems to show the aftermath of Black Ops 6 Zombies. Because MW3 takes place in the year 2021-2022, Black Ops 6 takes place in the 1990s. MW3 is a sequel to BO6, and from what we've been shown in this final ending cutscene, it involves Liberty Falls and the events that took place there in the 90s when we will play during BO6. So this cutscene is showing us what happens over 30 years later. Anyway, the storyline in MW3 Zombies revolves mainly around two characters, Ava Jansen and Revanov, but we also get brief mentions of Samantha Maxis, who is Ava's biological mother, Dr. Grey, who is Ava's mother as well, but through other means. Revanov is her father, and then we've also had mentions of Richtofen, who of course at the time of Cold War was the director of Requiem, but now 30 years later, a lot of time has passed since then, and he's moved on to what he would call bigger and better things. So anyway, this cutscene kicks off 3 months after we defeated the entity in the Dark Aether, where we see Ava has travelled to Liberty Falls to investigate what happened to Miller as a child. While she's on the phone to her father Revanov, we see her going through all of this classified documentation pertaining to Project Janus. We see a blueprint of the Wunderwaffe DG2, which in the old Aether storyline was a weapon that was created by Dr. Edward Richtofen, the Ultimus version. I almost forgot we actually have the Wunderwaffe in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, but on these blueprints there is the Project Janus logo at the top left. It says DG2 prototype, final release for manufacture. On the left there's also some blueprints for the LTG device, and then there's a bunch of documents sprawled everywhere. But when she opens the incident report, she has a picture of Edward Richtofen, who looks quite a bit different to the last time we saw him back in Cold War, and a transcript of an interview from Miller about the events she experienced on Outbreak Day when she was living in Liberty Falls in 1991. The interviewer is Janus Security Chief John Banchard, and he says, "Hello Crystal, I'm John. Do you remember me from yesterday? I'm sorry Crystal, you're going to have to speak into the microphone. Can you do that for me?" Crystal Miller then says, "Yes." JB says, "I'm going to ask you a few questions. Do you think you can answer them for me?" "Yes." "How old are you, Crystal?" 5. 5? Okay, you're doing great. You're being very brave. Do you know why you're here? Yes. Do you think you can tell me why? Because they're all dead. Who's dead, Crystal? Mummy, Daddy, the man in Oliver's comic book store. Can you tell me what happened? Other people from the town chased Daddy down an alley and bit him. He fired his rifle, but then Mom grabbed my wrist really, really hard and pulled me down the street. It really hurt. As she's reading this, Ava continues to talk to Revanov on the phone. Because this is 3 months after they defeated the entity, they're just saying it's taken a while to process everything that's happened. Revanov then asks Ava what her next plans are, and that's when she says back to him, "Are you checking up on me?" As she walks up to the mirror, looks into it quickly, and then as she walks away, a shadowy figure appears. He's wearing some sort of top hat or cowboy hat. There are buildings in the background, a background that doesn't look familiar to us. The camera then cuts back to Ava. She tells Revanov that she's been thinking about Miller's report and that she's visiting the site of where all that happened in Liberty Falls. She throws the documents back down on the bed where we see a few new ones, some footage of the Liberty Falls incident. There is another document from Dr. Pericles Panos, who was a part of Project Janus's Energy Research Division. But then as Ava tells Revanov she's in Liberty Falls, he quickly tells her that she has to leave that place, it's not safe. And that's when we see a hand reaches out of that mirror through what looks like a rift. Ava's eyes start glowing, and a voice, which sounds like her mother, Samantha, calls out her name. Ava says, "Mother, is that you?" As she inches closer towards her hand, Ava then quickly pulls her hand away, but the hand in the mirror grabs her arm and pulls her in, before the camera pans into a painting of Liberty Falls on the wall with a plaque underneath it that says, "Welcome to Liberty Falls, one visit and you'll want to stay forever." So obviously a couple of really juicy stuff happens within here. Ava travels to Liberty Falls 30 years after the initial incident, intrigued by what happened to Miller as a child. While she's here, she's going through a bunch of documentation. She has a blueprint of the Wunderwaffe DG2, an LTG device, a picture of Richtofen, and a transcript of an interview between Miller and one of Project Janus's employees when she was a child. Pretty standard stuff. That is until Ava approaches the mirror, and as she walks away from it, a shadowy figure appears in it. And then moments later, she is pulled in. So the question is, who is this? Now, if you are a Zombies fan and you know the Call of Duty Zombies storyline before Black Ops Cold War, the first thing that might have come to your mind when you saw this shadow figure was the Shadow Man. Not only because of his black shadowy silhouette, but also his hat. The Shadow Man in Black Ops 3 and 4 was famous for wearing this, I guess it was a top hat. Now, if you compare the two, I have to admit they look very, very similar. It's almost impossible to say just from this that this absolutely can't be the Shadow Man. There's no way of telling other than going back and looking at what happened to him the last time we saw him and where he would be right now in the current zombie storyline, and also what we know about him, what powers he has. Well, at the end of Black Ops 4 Zombies, when the cycle was broken in Tag Toten, everything was banished to the Dark Aether. So Dr. Monty, the Apothecans, Element 115, anything that spewed forth of the Aether was banished to the Dark Aether. However, the Shadow Man's situation was a little bit different because at that point in time, he was trapped inside of the Summoning Key. He became trapped in the key in Shadows of Evil. He would later escape it in Revelations, but because as a part of the broken cycle, Revelations never happens, we go from Shadows of Evil to the Giant to Zetsubo no Shima, but then instead of going from Gorod Kurovi to Revelations, we go from Zetsubo to Blood of the Dead, and then to Classified, Alpha Omega, and then Tag Toten. Gorod Kurovi and Revelations never happen as a part of the broken cycle, meaning the Shadow Man never escaped the Summoning Key. During the point of Tag Toten, he should still be trapped inside of it. And since we see Nikolai destroys the Summoning Key using the Orgothan device, in turn causing the collapse of the multiverse, if the Shadow Man was in the key at the time it was destroyed, well, what happened to him? Just like Dr. Monty and everything else, would he have been banished to the Dark Aether, or would the destruction of the Summoning Key also have caused him to have been destroyed, meaning it wasn't possible for him then to be banished to the Dark Aether? We don't know, we were never told that. But let's just assume, like Monty, he was banished to the Dark Aether. Well, as we've seen in Cold War Vanguard and Modern Warfare 3, things have started to leak out and escape. I remember a infamous quote by Craig Houston, I think during Cold War's release, where he said, some things that you thought died in the old storyline in Black Ops 4, that you thought were banished to the Dark Aether and we'd never see again, might not end up staying dead. They could return in one way, shape or form, and that's already happened. It's also important to know what exactly the Shadow Man is, because he's not a normal human. He was one of the very first beings to ever exist alongside Dr. Monty and the rest of the Keepers. He then became corrupted by the Dark Aether, working for the Apothecans, but since he'd existed since the beginning of time, that means two things. He wasn't susceptible to the average human danger, he wasn't a human, so he wouldn't have succumbed to old age or something like that. He would have had to have been killed. And two, he also holds many powers, one of them being his ability to shapeshift. The Shadow Man was very good at manipulating people, pretending to be someone he wasn't. For example, in Shadows of Evil, he posed as a man called Mr. Rapt, where he manipulated a reporter into collecting artifacts for him. In Blood of the Dead, he posed as the Lord. He manipulated the Warden into sacrificing himself, transforming Alcatraz into a pocket dimension. All throughout the zombie storyline, he manipulated Richtofen, speaking to him in his head and getting him to act as his agent. And we also saw he can change form. He has his Apothecan form, which looks like this, and then his regular human form. As to whether these were just the two forms he could change into, or there were more, we don't know. But the point is, the Shadow Man was the master of manipulation. Now, like I was saying, let's just say he did get banished to the Dark Aether and he wasn't destroyed inside of the key. A lot of time has passed since then. A lot of things have happened. A lot of new entities have become Lords of the Dark Aether. For example, the Forsaken. At the point of his reign, he was the top of his game. He was the most powerful in there. He was the Elder God. Of course, there are many more. We never heard any references in those games to characters existing in the Dark Aether that would resemble the likes of the Shadow Man or Dr. Monty. Besides from this, one time when the Forsaken ate one of the old ones and then gained its power, and this power it gained was the ability to shapeshift and change appearance, one of the very same powers that Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man had. The Forsaken also had the ability to change into a human and his Dark Aether form. That document talks about how that Dark Aether Old One valued science and technology and ended up stalking Zykov, but before it could kill him, the Forsaken snuck up on this Old One, grabbed him and began to tear into its flesh, changing appearance as it did. We now know that Zykov was the Forsaken, but besides from that, there is no mention of anything like the Shadow Man existing still within the Dark Aether, but that doesn't mean he wasn't and still isn't in there. It just means he's more than likely lower down in the ranks where he wasn't noticed. Or, as he did in the old timeline, was working in the shadows, waiting for his opportunity. And going back to this cutscene, when we see this shadowy figure appear in the mirror, Ava walks away, and then a few seconds later, a hand reaches out and calls out to Ava. Ava says, "Mother?" So she clearly believes this voice is Samantha Maxis, this hand is Samantha. Now, it very well could be. We don't know what Samantha's situation is. If she's dead, remember, this is in the year 2021, 2022, 30 years after we last saw her, and time in the Dark Aether works differently. But I don't think this voice was Samantha Maxis, and it was someone pretending to be her. I think it was this shadow figure that we see tricking Ava into believing it is her mother. And if that's the case, that tells us the shadow person, just like the Shadow Man, can change appearance. We can tell that by the hand, that is a woman's hand. So whoever this is, it seems like they can shapeshift like the Shadow Man could. They trick Ava into believing it's her mother, and then as she hesitates to hold the hand, she pulls away, but the hand pulls her in. The ultimate question then would be, well, if this is the Shadow Man, what is his goal? Is he simply trying to escape the Dark Aether, or is it something bigger? Or, on the other end of the spectrum, this isn't the Shadow Man, and it's a new character. And actually, in the final fight, as you're battling against the entity, just as you defeat her, she says this to Ava. So the entity says, "Little sister, he is searching for you. The ShadowSmiths will take you." We have never heard of these ShadowSmiths ever in our zombie storyline. Whatever these are, they are totally new, and there's all the chance that whatever this shadow figure is, this is a ShadowSmith. And that would make sense. The entity says to Ava, the ShadowSmiths will take you, and what happens 3 months later, this shadow figure grabs her and takes her. So whatever the ShadowSmiths are, this could be one of them. And the other thing she said just before that was, "Little sister, he is searching for you." Who is he? It sounds like the ShadowSmiths are working for whoever he is. Just going back to the Shadow Man, is there the chance that he is the Shadow Man and the ShadowSmiths are people that work for him or follow him? Could the ShadowSmiths be the disciples of the Shadow Man? That's one theory, although it sounds a little bit crazy. I'm really struggling to believe that this is the Shadow Man. I just can't see Treyarch bringing him back. It's the same with characters like Dr. Monty, but who knows, we've seen plenty of things return from the old story. So if it's not the Shadow Man, then who is it that is searching for Ava? And why has he sent the ShadowSmiths to take her? I'm guessing he is another personal creature within the Dark Aether, and we can presume he is higher up in rankings than what the entity was. Perhaps the entity worked for him or was doing his bidding. This is the first time we've heard of anything like this. How long has he existed? Was he alive during the time of the Forsaken's rule? Because we believed the Forsaken to be the most powerful entity within the Dark Aether during his time. But if the ShadowSmiths leader existed when Forsaken did, why did we never hear of him? Or did he only come about after? Because we know within the Dark Aether how the rankings work. As we saw in Vanguard Zombies, there are factions. Very rarely has there been one leader. Back in the old timeline, it was the Elder Gods who were the most powerful, led by the Shadow Man. In Vanguard Zombies, we had the Elder Gods such as Cortifex, Vicona, or whatever her name was, and all of the other Elder Gods. In Black Ops Cold War, it was Forsaken who was the big bad leader, at least that's what we were led to believe. And now in Black Ops 6 Zombies, we have a new character within the Dark Aether who sounds like he is the leader of these ShadowSmiths, and he's sent them to do his bidding, to take Ava. For what though? We don't know. I also don't want to totally dismiss the idea that it was actually Samantha's mother that pulled her in. It just seems unlikely. I'm not going to lie, it was an aggressive move. I just don't think it was. And the final thing I wanted to bring up is just, again, going back to the mirror. Okay, we have this shadow figure, but in the background, a bunch of buildings which don't look familiar. When I first saw this, it reminded me for some reason of an old industrial revolution European city, or like old Italy, something like that. The background behind the shadow figure doesn't look like it would be in the Dark Aether. It also doesn't look like the background of Liberty Falls, so I'm gonna leave that one there. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comment section below. We do have a trailer coming up, so maybe we'll find out more information then. But what do you think? Is this the Shadow Man? Is it a new person? Is it one of the ShadowSmiths? Leave your comments down below. Drop a like rating if you've enjoyed, make sure you are subscribed, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.